absolutely wild as Verne Gagne's all-star wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once if you would.
You want to see it?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
And he didn't come out. And so I took it an extra step, which is probably something I shouldn't have done in hindsight, but I did it anyway. I said, Stan, let's go through the front. Let's go through the people and leave. He goes, what? I said, let's don't go out the back door. Come on. And he's following me along. And Stan was always worried about my mindset. And we walked through the people in Louisville and we're waving, goodbye, goodbye. Wow. And people going, hey, you're in the main event, aren't you? We're done. We quit. Bye. And we waved to all of them, left.
Whoa.
Went home. And then in the shock of things, realizing, well, I just quit the territory and we don't really have a place to go. So Jerry Jarrett called me at home. You know, this was back when the phones where you crank them on the wall. It wasn't that bad. I mean, you know, you didn't have a cell phone in your pocket, but he waits till I get home. He calls me at home. So what's the deal? And I explained it to him. Ain't going to do that. He said, well, unfortunately, you know, we can't just keep you because that means that you guys are controlling everything, including the office. So, you know, if you're going to go, you're going to go. And he says, where are you going to go? And he was the one that suggested going to work for Verne, and he called Verne, and, you know, Verne says, yes, send him up. Next thing I know, here comes the U-Haul again. Loaded up that U-Haul and drug a car. And I mean, you know, my life was one big story. The night I drove to Minneapolis, credit cards were few and far between at the time, too, and I had credit cards, and my wife would put them in a strong box and put them inside the U-Haul, well, right dead center on the floor in the middle of the U-Haul. It was a huge truck. And just outside of Chicago, I called her at home. She stayed. My family flew up, and I drove and took everything. And Terry, where's the credit card? And she goes, it's in the U-Haul, in the middle on the floor. And I go, well, I'm out of gas. And I got no money. Anyway, pulled into a rest area, unloaded half the U-Haul, dug into there, almost got pinned down, had a Weimaraner dog tied to a pole beside me. Anyway, got the credit cards out. Everything's fine. Got it kind of half loaded again, and then took off, got some gas. Got off on the interstate, got some gas, got back on. I'm thinking, this is great. Got a big cup of coffee. I look at him 10 miles outside of Chicago. I turned around and was headed back through Chicago. So,
what? Where'd he go?
No.
I'm loving this. Now the man's headed back. I think he went back to Chicago.
I think he did. I think he did go back to Chicago there.
Oh my. What fun this is.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
You know, and guys, I tell you so many times, when I listen to these veterans that have been in the business 40 years talking about the old days, it brings.
I don't hear you guys.
Oh, he's back.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, we thought you were going back to Chicago.
I can't hear you guys.
Uh-oh.
Somebody just called me while it was going on, so I don't know if they're leaving a message, and now I can't hear y'all until they're done or what, but I'm just going to keep rambling.
Good.
Tell us about going back to Chicago.
I'm still waiting for an audio. I'm sure it's just because I'm real technical now. You know, if anything happens with my phone, I got to get one of my kids or grandkids to fix it. All right. You're in the show.
Are we
I'm
here?
on the show.
Yep, we're here.
Okay,
yep,
just keep
here.
talking.
Okay, so
No
we're going to.
problem.
No,
I can ramble on.
Really good.
Anyway, AWA. That's how we ended up in the AWA. I mean, you know, we had just a walkout. Hey, there you are.
We all good?
Can you hear us?
I see you, but I don't hear you. Anyway, I'm hoping something will happen all of a sudden miraculously, and I'll start picking you up. But so then we go to the AWA, and like I said, when we first went in there, Verne, we got the videos, but we watched him. We watched his TV one time when we'd been there a couple of weeks, and Verne was notorious for playing half of stuff. He'd play half a video on this one and half a video on that one, and it was never the full thing, and it was kind of confusing. And so, I mean, you know, he was really lost with what to do with us, and so it just he had to get a lot of input from us, and they were real open. I mean, you know, I'd already heard Verne was like a tyrant. He was a dictator. You know, every territory had reputations. And that was the one thing, you know, your friends would smarten you up and say, oh, man, well, Tennessee's a cartoon and you'll never get over Dundee and Lawler. Well, you don't want to go to the AWA. Verne's a dictator. And if you start to get over, he'll squash your ass and get rid of you. But, you know, when we started to go there, I already had a little bit of an insight because one of my high school friends had already been there, Terry Bollet, and had a confrontation with Verne. And I guess Verne went to leg dive him. I wasn't there. But Terry front face locked him and choked him out. And that was the end of Verne being a dictator. So by the time we got there, he was a little tamer. I mean, you know, he'd still get mad and his head would turn really red when he would scream at me. But, I mean, you know, he cooled off. I mean, you know, because back to working the workers, I could see where he was getting with this screaming at me. And I'd wait till he was blowed up and done. And then I'd just kind of ease in with something simple like, yeah, I get it. Okay, whatever you want, you're the boss. And once you say that to any of the bosses, they got no comeback. You know, when you surrender and wave a white flag at them and say, okay, you're the boss. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. You want me to put these guys over 10 straight? No problem. I ain't got no problem. This is a business. Anyway, we got to figure out why I'm not hearing you guys now.
You're still not hearing us?
Is there any buttons you think that I can push? Let's see here. I mean, my phone's limited on and off, so since I got a phone call, I haven't had any audio since then from y'all. Y'all look good,
I would
though.
say to log off and log back in, but...
You're still hearing me okay, huh?
Yep.
We are.
Okay, well, if I was Robert or Ricky Gibson, I could do sign language. Robert was one of my...
Oh, now you're muted. You turned your audio
younger
off.
kid. We used to
There
pick
you
him
go.
up from high school. Their mom was a deaf mute, and they both did sign language, so I didn't ever learn any of that. So let me see. Anything I could do here to...
Hey, Chris,
I know
maybe
you guys can't...
Maybe text them and have them log off and log back on.
Yeah, I will.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
Oh, there we are.
There you
hear
are.
us?
Thanks. Oh, perfect. Sorry.
There we are. Yeah, I was working on some things, trying to work on some things behind the scenes, but we're all good here.
Yes, we are. I'm back in
Awesome.
the business. I'm back in business.
Steve, I got a question about
All right.
came to the AWA. I saw a
Now you're out again.
What?
Whatever you did, you went in and out.
So yeah, Chris, maybe stay on camera. Now can you hear us, Steve?
Nothing.
No sound. Now you're back. Now you're back.
Okay.
Now you're back.
All right.
Strange.
Let me
Go ahead, Mick.
Let's try this.
Say something.
When you came to the
Well, gone
Can't hear
again.
Doggone it.
Well, Joe, when
There you go.
came to the-
Can you keep your finger on
You
that
see,
button?
Steve.
Can you
I'm
hear
not
it?
gonna move. I'm not gonna
Okay.
move.
Okay, now I've got you. I got
Okay.
you.
What, Steve? When you came to the AWA,
Now I don't have you.
boy,
Can
there's
you,
something.
hold on,
about
Steve. Can you hear me? No, nothing.
Nothing.
Weird.
Okay, I'm gonna remove myself again.
Okay. I got you.
Okay, you can hear us now.
Joe? you
Yep.
say-
Can you hear us?
Okay.
There, do you have us now?
I've got you.
Okay, you've got
Very
me. Do you have Mick and Joe?
Say something, Mick and
Can
Joe.
you hear us?
Can you hear us? Hello.
Can't do it.
They're waving, but they're not saying anything.
No, so you can't. Okay, so if you can only hear me for right now, then. So with your time in the AWA, then I want to ask you, like, overall, how do you feel you were treated then by Verne and Greg and everybody in the office?
I was treated with respect. I mean, we had the ability to put butts in seats, and we were totally different than what they had. So Verne's a businessman, and he respected Eddie Graham. And anybody that came out of the state of Florida had a reputation and respect for where they came from. And so I had the utmost respect. I mean, when I first went to Tennessee, it was kind of iffy, even though Jerry Jarrett and Eddie were friends. It took one incident that Jerry Jarrett realized that, he knows too much. Jerry Jarrett actually walked up to me one time when we were on top of the world, and he put his arm up around my shoulder. And he said, "Kid, this is awesome. You guys are really the stuff right now, man. We're going to make some money." And I slipped my arm up under his arm, and I put it up over his shoulder. And now I said, "I already know this one." And he said, "What?" And I said, "I've taught this a long time ago. When a promoter puts his arm around your shoulder, he's getting ready to push your ass off a cliff." I said, "If I'm going, Jarrett, you're going with me, and I'm going to land on you." And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh my God." And so Verne was real receptive. Greg was real receptive. I actually rented Greg's house in Edina. Was it Edina? Does that sound right? Edina? No, Eden Prairie.
Yep, Edina, yep.
No, it was Eden Prairie.
Okay.
It was Eden Prairie. He had a home, and he rented his house to me. And for a while, I thought we were going to own the damn territory. Stan started, he moved in with Kathy Gagne. And I'm going, "Go, Stan. Marry her, and I'll be the booker." I mean, and Stan was a single guy, and he was a ladies' man, boy, sweet Stan. He could go out. He could dance, he could sing, he could do it all. And in a bar, he was in heaven in Minneapolis because, no offense to you all, but you guys are nuts. You guys are in the house way too much. And everybody lives inside up there like hermits. And it drove me out of my mind. But Stan said, "Man, it's great. Everybody's in a bar every night. Everybody's, they got to stay inside where it's warm and all this." And I'm going, unreal. And when we travel, I'd travel in a snowsuit. I mean, it's like I had no use for cold weather. I mean, I'm a guy that likes to cook out, and you do that outdoors.
Yeah.
You actually have a grill, and it's right outside.
Our grilling season is very, very short.
Yeah, you got 2 months. Because I did a lot of grilling with real long extensions, flippers, and I'd have to slide the door open and flip my stuff on the grill. And I mean, it was brutal. And then I was ribbed on myself. It was like I was being paid back. And I remember the first time we had a big snow. I mean, I went out and bought a Bronco because I thought you had to have a 4-wheel drive if I'm going to live here.
Yep.
I bought a Bronco, and every time it snowed, they'd clean the streets. I mean, they were on top of it, but they didn't clean your driveway. And in Greg's house, I'd park my Bronco in the garage. The very first time I look out, I see the snow, and I'm going, "Oh, man." I mean, what do you do with that? And so I went next door to my neighbor's house, and I said, "Listen, I'm from Florida, man." I said, "What do you do with the snow?" He says, "Well, you can borrow my snow blower." And I said, "What is it?" He says, "You just take it out there and it cleans off your driveway." I said, "Okay." Well, it wasn't that easy. I mean, the only thing I'd been used to is running lawnmowers. I mean, we mow lawns. I'm mowing my lawn tomorrow, as a matter of fact, in 80-degree weather. Eat your heart out. But it ain't the same pattern. So I got the snow blower, and my neighbor, I'll never forget looking over at their picture window, and their whole family's watching me. and I'm going along the edge of my driveway, and I'm blowing it in the middle, right, as I'm coming around. And I make 2 or 3 passes, and I'm looking at the middle of the driveway, and I'm going, wait a minute. Am I building a snowman here or what? How do you get that out of the middle? And I look over, and they're in their living room laughing, and they're rolling around and pointing at me and everything. And now I know this isn't the right way to run this thing.
It's just like driving back to Chicago.
Yeah, you got to sit in the middle of that driveway and work your way out, which made no sense when I first got it. But anyway, I learned a lot of things, and we got used to it, and we suffered through Winnipeg and, Minneapolis and upstate there, and some of those places that, I don't know if you guys know it, but we have a freezer down here and on our refrigerator that works just as good as the whole country freezing everything. I remember me and Curt Hennig were really close. We got to be really close friends. He was young and very impressionable at the time. And I mean, he loved me. And I loved him too, because his dad was a badass. Anyway, so he invited me to do stuff with him, like go ice fishing, which makes no sense at all. Whoever invented that stuff was ribbing y'all. Cut a hole in the ice this big around and then put a string down in there, a line, and then sit in there and play cards and drink beer. It's really a way to get away from your wife, and you couldn't kid me. You want to go get away from your family, go ice fishing.
Oh, my God.
And you get out there, and I told Curt, I said, brother, my bait at home is bigger than that hole. I got to have a bigger hole. And he goes, the fish ain't going to be that much bigger. I said, then why are we here? And I said, one thing you ain't got to worry about is having a cooler, that's for sure. But and Curt talked me into so many stupid things that I did in that snow. He talked me into holding on to his 4-wheel drive, and we drove on Lake Minnetonka or whatever it was in that area. And he said, just hang on to this rope. He says it's just like ice skating. He said your feet are going to slide. And I mean, at first he was going slow. And I kind of got the hang of it, like water skiing almost, just keep my balance there. Now Curt kicks it up a gear. Now pretty soon I'm hanging on. Now he's dragging my ass. I mean, we had a blast.
Oh, my God.
He ended up being one of my closest friends. And I mean, I admired him so much later on, and had some funny stories with Curt. For your territory up there, I can remember there was a guy that was doing a deal, and his name wasn't George Plimpton or something, but he was a guy that was trying to go and do every sport. And he had done a deal with Verne that he was going to do a documentary on being a pro wrestler. And he had me and Curt Hennig work out with them. And Curt was so funny. He did a deal with the guy. The guy was a small guy. And the guy, he said, get on all fours. So the guy got on all fours. And Curt sat on his shoulders with his feet, hooking them into the insides of his thighs. So they're both facing the same way, but only Curt's sitting on top of him. And he says, I'm going to do crunches up here, and you support me. And the guy's going, yeah. And I'm sitting ringside watching this. And I can't believe this is getting ready to happen. But Curt leans back at about 240, 250. And that guy did not even come close to supporting him. I mean, it just drove the guy's face straight into the mat. And his head was so far up Curt's ass, I had to go pull his head out of Curt's ass. And the guy was almost dead. And I was laughing so hard. And Curt never cracked a smile. His straight face like that was part of his deal. And
Oh, my God.
I knew I was in love with him from that day on.
Oh man, all of the stories that we hear about Curt Hennig, to hear that. Before we let you go here, Steve, tell us about your book, The Current Chronicles. Tell us, how you came up with it, where we can get it, and all of that pertinent information, because we want to get that.
Okay. All right. Well, it's on Amazon. That's the only place you can get it. And I'm blessed to have it. When I was approached to do it, of course, it was my peers. I span 4 generations in the wrestling business. I'm not just my generation like a lot of my friends are. I span through 4 generations, and I actually put in 44 years full time. But I was wrestler for approximately 30 years full time. And then things started getting scattered with the territories folding and it all going into cable and everything. And so when I was approached, everybody's going and said, man, you got a million stories and pictures and history. And I mean, I was there when Saito and Patera got arrested. Me and Stan were on with them the night in that hotel. Matter of fact, we told Ken he was coming down the hill, go to the McDonald's, and we had left our bags at the counter and said, "Oh, hey Ken, man, they just closed. They just closed. It was 11 o'clock." And he goes, "This is what Ken Patera says to me instead." He goes, "Well, they'll open for me. I'm Ken Patera." I'm going, didn't know he meant that, but anyway. Blackjack Mulligan was on that flight. And the next morning when we got up, Blackjack's going, "Bro, you're not going to believe this." And we went down the hallway where they had fought, and he's going, "Look at this." And then about that time, here come a train of law enforcement and Patera and Saito in little jumpsuits, and they'd been bailed out. And then we listened to the story. And I mean, and it was like, I had the opportunity to be in a lot of places. I mean, so, but the book, it was just one of those second thoughts. And I'm a realist. I'm not an embellishing guy. First thing is I don't trash anybody. I try not to. Sometimes it leaks out when they ask me, "Well, what do you think of that guy's work?" Well, that's horrible. I mean, but I don't like just go after people and try to run them down. And then I'm smart enough to know that I'm not an icon for my industry. I was just a soldier. I'm just an average soldier that rolled through at 6 foot, 230 pounds. And I was a tool. I was beat a lot. I mean, I was utilized a lot. I was fortunate that I wasn't a second generation wrestler. So there was no nepotism involved. Mm-hmm. Whatever I got on my own. But, it's like, Hawk said to me one time when I double crossed him, I think it was the first time, either Minneapolis or after Puerto Rico when I double crossed him, and he goes, "What's your win-loss record?" And I looked at him and I went, "What?" And he said, "What's your win-loss record?" And I go, that's a tough one. I said, "I probably lost more than I've won." And he goes, "Well, we've never lost." And I said, "Well, I don't care if you win or lose tonight. As long as I get paid." I said, "Nobody's keeping score but you." And I said, "If you got family members," I said, my family's smart. When they see me get beat, they know we're getting paid. I mean, it's a business. It's a work.
Yeah.
And guys, they get lost. They lose track. Some of them, it goes to their head. Yes. And they start believing that this is that's them. I guess because I wasn't a shooter, or, the super tough guy, or the ego thing. I was educated, that, you put people over when you're asked to, because you're asked by your boss. And so even when I educated this generation that people are witnessing now in the WWE, most of that talent came under me when I owned FCW, the developmental. And I taught them. I said, don't compare yourself to nobody else in the business, or you'll always feel like you're getting mistreated. I said, and just treat it as a business. If you're a superstar, you're a superstar. If you're not, then just get your check and figure out how to save your money. And so, but the book, it's not like I'm avoiding promoting it. It was one of those things that once I wrote it, and once we were sitting down writing, and my writer is Ian Douglas. He's written 5 other wrestlers' books, and actually he did this book here too. Where's my thing? Oh, here it is. Bohemian Rhapsody, and this is the history of the wrestling in the Bahamas. And I did the foreword in this book because I spent a lot of time with their history in the Bahamas. I wrestled there a lot, and so he helped me write it. He dictated things to me. He basically would interview me on Wednesday nights for 2 hours every Wednesday for a year. And we compiled enough, and he said to me, he said, "You got too much. We got to do 2 books." And so we did the first one, and I took it to 1987, from 72 to 87 in my career. And it's mostly territorial days and the beginning of the WWF and all of that. And then the second one that's coming out this year, it starts in the WWF when I did Skinner. And when I went to Vince and said, "Well, I don't know, everybody's a character. You know, I don't know what you want me to be. I was one of the fabulous." He says, "I know who you are," because I'd worked for his dad, but I was trying to be very, very polite. And he said, "I had just killed 15 alligators in the first alligator harvest," like that bad boy right up there.
Whoa.
Anyway, that was the real deal. And I laid an alligator hide on his desk. I laid a skull. I laid a paw, some teeth and stuff. And I said, "Well, I got this. You know, everybody seems to have a character." And he said, "Listen, Steve," he said, "I'm going to go ahead and hire you." And he said, "We'll figure it out, put it in creative's hands, and bring you back in a month." He said, "Get rid of that bleached blonde hair. Let it grow natural. Let your beard go from Miami Vice looking beard to a just shaggy. Just let it go. And this is one inside secret for all of y'all, just so you know. Vince, there's something with Vince and beards. He loves beards." And I would tell all the talent when they were going from FCW, "Grow a damn beard, man. No matter what. No matter what, if you grow a beard, he'll use you." I mean, you know, and if you look at the guys in the territory up there now, just count the beards. But anyway, he said, "We'll come up with something." I went home, and for a month, I was getting a paycheck. I was hoping he didn't call me back. Just keep sending the money. And he calls me, and I go back to New York. And anyway, they sat me down, and so we come up with your character. And I go, "Okay, can't wait to hear this one." And he goes, "Did you ever see the movie Deliverance, Steve?" And I go, "About 100 times, Vince." And he goes, "Well, we want you to be one of those guys in that movie." And I looked at Vince, and Pat Patterson was the booker. He's sitting there looking at me. And Pat Patterson wasn't exactly on the top of my friend list because I'd kind of beat him up in the ring because Briscoe's revved me up one time in Miami, told me he's gay and he's going to try to grab my balls. And I go, "You watch the match." Anyway, I jerked half of Pat Patterson's hair out. As a matter of fact, on the finish of the match, I was supposed to go over, but he left the ring and got counted out. Anyway, but so Vince and Patterson are looking at me and they go, "Well, I want you to be one of those guys." So I'm looking at Vince, and serious as could be, I go, "You want me to be Burt Reynolds?" And Vince looks at me and looks at Patterson and says, not the guy we had in mind." I said, "Well, wait a minute." I said, "I'm too pretty to be anybody else in that movie. I sure as hell ain't going to be that banjo player. I can tell you that right now." And he says, "No, we want you to be one of the 2 guys in the woods with Ned Beatty that says, 'Hey, boy, you got a right pretty mouth.'" Man, it was perfect. You know, the funny parts about it was like when I first did a character, we did vignettes, and I called my mom, and I told my mom the channel to watch. They lived over on the other coast in Melbourne, Florida, and I said, "Watch, I'm in the WWF now." My mom watched it 3 weeks in a row when I did vignettes and said, "I never did see you, honey. I never did see you, honey." I said, "Mom, you saw me. You just haven't seen me in a while." And so when she realized who I was, Skinner, and what I look like now, and she's going, "Oh, I'm going to have to stop telling people at church that you're in the wrestling business. I don't want anybody, I don't want anybody to watch." Not to mention that I was actually a racial character, which I'm not a racial person. I grew up in a military family, and there's no colors in military, and you're not educated that way. My parents didn't teach me that, and I grew up I'm colorblind when it comes to color. I just don't like bad people, whether they're black, white, or polka dot. And but as for black friends, I got a million of them. But I took the character to the limits when the Rodney King beating was going on in L.A. They canceled some WWF shows there, and when they finally come back, old Rachel Skinner's right in the middle of it. And I went out there and I'm wrestling Virgil, and on front row was Arsenio Hall, Eddie Murphy, and MC Hammer.
Oh,
there was always
Wow.
I threw Virgil out on the floor at their feet, and I came out there and I run his head into the rail right there, and I looked at all three of them, and I stuck my boot up there in front of them.
Oh.
And at the top of my voice in a dead silent arena that hadn't had a live event because of that racial turmoil from the Rodney King beating, I said, which one of you, and I used the N-word really loud, wants to shine my boots?
Oh, man.
Let me tell you something. All three of those guys busted out laughing. And when the show was over, the only one they wanted to meet was Skinner. And I remember Arsenio Hall, and my son was on a tour with me, and my son was probably about 10. And he goes, "Who's that guy?" And I said, "I think he's on TV a lot. His name's Arsenio." He come in, he says, "Dad, he's so excited about meeting you." He said, he can't wait to meet you. And when I went over to him, I said, "Hey, man, I'm sorry. I'm just doing a character. It's like being a movie star. That's not my persona in real life and all that. But I'm bending over backwards to be the bad guy." And he says to me, he says, "Listen, you got unbelievable balls to do that in the tension that's going on right now racially, and you scream that out in an arena like that." He said, "We popped. We couldn't believe it." Says, "You're over with us," So
Man.
I mean, there's a lot more, and I'm not going to get into it because that's the only thing anybody will remember. They won't remember to buy my book on Amazon, but they'll remember, you don't want to invite him.
Wow.
Well, that absolutely incredible, and I know there's so much more that we could get into. I know that you got to run, you got to do some things, but man, Steve,
back, Chris.
Yeah, I got to go out and get a suntan.
there you go, there you go. Hey, Steve, man, I appreciate this so much. Thanks so much for the time.
You're welcome, Chris.
Hopefully, we can do this again, man. This was fantastic.
Yes.
It was
Steve.
no pun
It's
intended.
not fantastic.
Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Fabulous. It's fabulous.
I got to correct everybody all the time on that. They try to compliment or try to be, "Hey, that was fantastic." I said, "Nah, I don't use that word."
Yeah, it was fabulous. Hey,
There
thanks,
you
Steve.
go.
Hopefully, we'll do it again.
Well, I hope so. I got another book coming out, so hopefully you guys will be interested in hearing it because it really encompasses a lot of stuff that I think people will find interesting in the transition from territorial days into the cable and the levels I went. I mean, wrestling was just part of it. Then an agent for 6 years under Vince when there's only 5 wrestlers that controlled the whole WWE and all the pay-per-views and everything, and then owning FCW, the developmental, and then gently and gracefully retiring out.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much meat on that bone, and yeah, let's do it again because you have so many stories that we haven't even touched. But let's definitely do this again, Steve.
Okay, let me ask you, how many of y'all have read my book?
Not yet, but I'm.
Yeah, I have not. Yeah, now that I know that I'm going to go on Amazon right now. As a matter of fact, when I get done with this.
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. Because this is the comments I've gotten from my friends. I mean, CM Punk does my forward, and CM wasn't even working. He was off the chart. But I was a close friend of his, and I respected him, and he called me a mentor. And I said, "I want you to do my forward." And I said, most people that are going to talk about me that are my friends are going to embellish it and try to make me sound bigger than life. You're just a guy that kind of went through it. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it is, trying to go forward in this book business and everything, I wanted to do something. And the thing about my book is everybody that's ever read it said it's so easy reading that as they start to read, they can't put it down and they continue reading, no matter who's read it and I don't know if they're lying to me, but even my own family, would say, hey, Dad, your book's 400 pages long. I ain't got time to read it. And then, next thing I know, I said, man, I can't put it down. It's just, you're compelling to go to the next story and the next incident. So
sweet.
And just working on the second one. I mean, might have to be a third one because of the nasty boys are in my ear. Make sure you tell that story. Hey, tell them about the time you ribbed me. Tell them about the time we ribbed you. Stephen King's house. They ribbed me so bad at Stephen King's house on snow. Talk me into getting talk me a Skinner into getting on a disc and go down a hill and said, oh, it's fun. And I'm going, yeah. And I'm 250 and I got it wedged in that disc and knobs shoved me off that hill. I went through a set of hedges down at the bottom of the ground. I must have been there 50.
Good God, you're like Cousin Eddie in Christmas Vacation.
When I showed up at that show that night, my whole face was all tore up when I'd gone through it. And everybody's going, what happened to you? I said, knobs and sags taught me to slide down a hill in the snow. So there's a lot of stories and a lot of stuff that people will find funny and interesting.
I can tell you, I have an immense amount of respect for you and what you've done, your career, and how you've got perspective and you're able to keep it. Again, you're grounded in reality, and I feel like that's something that people need to remember in today's day and age. But man, all the respect in the world for you, Steve.
Thanks, Chris.
And thank you again for Mick and Joe. Thank you, and let's do it again because you are absolute. This has been a treat.
Don't say fantastic.
No, this has been a treat. This has been a treat. It's been fabulous. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Well, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. So there he is. Let's bring back in Mick and let's bring in Joe. And that was great. Like, there's so much there that we didn't even get to. But man, what a fantastic storyteller. Absolutely fantastic. Fabulous storyteller.
This is, it's rare that we are able to sit and listen. We've had some guests on the podcast where we've had to jump in ad nauseum over and over again to keep the conversation flowing and going. We didn't have to do that with Steve. This guy is so talented. I mean, that's the one thing, you think of Steve Keirn, 4.5 decades in the business.
Yeah.
And he did everything. And I tell you, personally, I was flabbergasted that Skinner was his favorite character. That really surprised me.
But it makes sense, though, when you hear him talk about how he was able to be somebody completely opposite of who he is as an individual.
Chris and Joe, he talked about those 1970s babyface promos. Greg and Jim at least, would show fire once in a while. But I remember some of those baby faces in the 70s, like when Jim Renzel told us, first time he auditioned in front of Vince, and Vince says, oh, we got another Backlund here. It was a different world back then. And I promise you, a team like the Fabulous Ones would not get over for 1 minute as a babyface tag team in this day and age, where the heels are the faces.
Yeah, different time. Two things that I took away from it is I was never really able to see the real Steve Keirn.
Right.
And by that, I mean, well, he even alluded to it when they were doing promos as baby faces. It was very difficult to do. He pretty much carried this entire hour and 30, almost 38 minutes right now. He carried it by telling story after story. So
yeah,
it's not what I expected. But the other thing that I took away, I didn't know that he was such a ribber, but it makes sense why he and Curt Hennig were so close, because Curt was the king of the rib.
Peter
I got to get his book. I got to read some of those stories. I always love hearing those locker room stories and the behind the scenes shit that they did.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mick.
Yeah, I was going to say, to Joe's point, we have a basic format when we do the show. We've talked about this before. We've got pictures ready to go. We've got questions ready to go.
Yep.
And it was kind of like Marty Jannetty, but in a totally opposite direction, because we abandoned the script. We let Steve talk, and Joe, like you said, the stories and the names he was talking about, to an old school guy like me, the Florida days with Dusty Rhodes and Bob Roop and Mike Graham and Eddie Graham. It just fascinating stuff.
Well, it went from one to another. So his storytelling, there was a reason why we were sitting here, because we told him before we went on, like you said, Nick, we've got a format, but we just kind of let this thing organically form. We let this thing, we don't try and push it in a particular way. Like, we've got questions we want to ask, but if we don't get to them, that's fine, because I felt like we got really good. So hopefully you guys feel like over the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to end up breaking this up into a couple of different episodes, so it's a little bit more digestible. But man, he told some great stories, and it makes me I'm legitimately going to get his book as soon as I'm going to get it today from Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to ask him about the Sharp Dressed Man music video. They did that when they were in Tennessee. Mike Shields, who hired me through Verne and into the AWA, I wanted to ask, like, did Mike Shields help produce that? I wanted to get more into that, because in my career, even back to when I was a fan before I got into the AWA, that was the first music video approach that I had ever seen. And so that's why I popped for it. And he was right. It was during the MTV era. Now MTV is coming into professional wrestling. This was before WWF blew up with WrestleMania 1.
Yeah.
So many more questions. Hell, I think we could probably do several hours with Steve moving forward.
And I don't see any reason why down the road we couldn't get him back.
Oh, we got to get him back. I mean, this guy, needless to say, Steve has a lot to talk about. And, I wanted to find out, how he felt, kind of playing second fiddle babyface to Greg when he came into the territory, how he felt when at Wrestle Rock, when Wyndham and Rotundo kind of got the fans behind them.
And that's the thing, like, because was there the subtle, did they have to subtly make that switch to being the villains?
They did, and I don't even know that they expected that, when they came out. It was,
and that's a true professional right there, to be able to make that change on the fly. Not an easy thing for talent to do. At least I would assume it's not an easy thing for talent to do.
No, especially if you've gone over the match in the locker room and you're anticipating the crowd to go one way, and all of a sudden they go another way. Now you're playing the subtle heel instead of going over as the babyface. So it was fascinating to me. Let's absolutely get him back. We got it. Good.
You might not,
all the respect.
You might not think it for somebody like Steve, who carried and talked for the majority of this podcast. But the other thing I got out of it, he really is humble. He knew his role. He knew his place. He did it well. Survived in the industry for 40 years, over 4 decades. I was impressed. I'll leave it at that.
Well, and when he's like, well, I'm not a legend. I was just I was a tool. I was part of the machine. You look at what he did in FCW, the talent that came through FCW, because we talk about OVW being a subsidiary, in a minor league for the WWE, WWF. FCW, the names that are on that roster today, a significant amount of them have Steve Keirn's influence, and it's absolutely amazing. So I think he's underselling himself, frankly.
Well, he is,
and that's part of the humbleness, Joe, that you're talking about.
Part of the humbleness Joe's talking about and the charm of Steve Keirn. I mean, that's, when you see a guy who's not full of himself, and he addressed that too. So many of these guys start believing their own publicity.
Yeah.
They have their own character, and he was not like that. So yeah, let's get him back.
Absolutely. Let's well, we haven't done this in a couple of weeks, so we're gonna do it. We haven't done the shout out. I'm gonna show you the preeminent shirt. If you want it, you can get it at tpublic.com. User Unleash Plus. You can get that. You can get the Slick Mick Guy coffee mug, which I have my coffee in. You can get well, you can't get hats, but you can get phone cases. You can get stickers. And if you become a member of our YouTube channel, we've had a live chat already. We've dropped our first exclusive watch along. We did that a couple of weeks ago. We did all of that. If you want to become a member, the link is in the description. It is absolutely in the description. I'm going to put the I'm going to see if I can put the membership tier up here, guys. And again, we haven't done this in a couple of weeks. This is all just kind of on the fly because we were going to do an hour and then it went long, but we're going to do 2 hours of it. So here it is. This is what you're going to get. You can see right there the body slam. I'm going to put it up to a full logo. Access to the podcast a day early. You get the monthly live chat, which we did a couple weeks ago on Sunday night. You get a personalized letter from me with a sticker and a magnet. And then the $4.99 a month. This is what I recommend, you guys. You get the podcast. You get the exclusive monthly video watch along with the updated commentary. It's the three of us. Unleash meets Mystery Science Theater 3000. You get live chats. You get the thank you letter from me on behalf of all of us with the sticker and the magnet. So there you go. I think, do I have everything here, guys?
I think you did. You did.
Okay. Let's get to some shout outs here, guys, and then we will bring it home.
Ron Trailstad and Eric Bartholomew, two old school wrestling fans, all the way back to the SNR days. They would write in every week, questions, watch religiously, and now they're doing the same thing with the podcast. So Ron and Eric, love you guys.
My shout out this week goes to somebody that I don't know of anyone in the business who doesn't have a good thing to say about him. And he's very highly respected and I know listens to the podcast. I'm talking about our friend Les Thatcher.
And he's also somebody that we will be getting on this podcast very, very soon. I know that Mick, you've talked to him. And my shout out's going to be to a friend of ours right across the river in Hudson, Wisconsin, Jason Marinus, who's a new member to our YouTube channel. So Jason, appreciate the messages, my man, and look forward to chatting up with you a little bit more next week. Are we doing the fan submitted tag team poll? Kind of what are we doing there, Mick?
We certainly are. You know, not that long ago, I put up a poll on our AWA Unleashed page and the also the Slick Mick page, asking fans to vote on who they think were the 10 greatest tag teams in the AWA. We're going to have the results. We'll go over it with a fine-tooth comb and some surprises.
Looking forward to it. No skin off our nose.
Was the Super Slayer part of that? Was he on one of those tag teams?
No, he was banned from virtually every wrestling arena in the world.
Might want to stay away from those swamps. You might get skinned alive down there, Mick.